Love lives here.
So I'm going to sing for you this morning. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Is that right? All right. So everybody knows who made that song, right? Raise your hand. All right. Who was it? So that song might invoke something in you, right? I remember one time I was singing for a women's club, and I was, like Earl and I had this conversation this morning about when you're doing something, you really don't know how people are really responding to it. So I was singing this song, and I was all into it, and there was one lady sitting there like this. And I was like, oh my gosh, she hates it. So it's the story I'm telling myself in my own head, right? But when I actually went and sat down, she was like, oh, that's one of my relatives, beloved's favorite song. And when you were singing it, I just was all into the feeling of it. So, but I'm telling myself this story in my head about the lady didn't like it. So, but that's not always the truth, right? That's not the truth. And so, this idea of peace, my talk title today is Keeping the Peace. Keeping the peace. And so it says, I was doing some research on it. It says, practicing peace is a journey. Oh, I'm a little bit scratchy today. Must be my hair. So I'm going to move it over here. I'm going to sling it. I'm going to whip my hair back and forth. So, so I looked it up in Colossians 3rd chapter 15 verse. It said, let the peace of spirit, says God, but let the peace of spirit rule your heart, to which also you were called in one body, and to be thankful. So in practicing this peace and keeping this peace in the world, we have to cultivate some things, cultivate inner peace within ourselves first, right? I can't be the peace that I want to see in the world if I'm not the peace in my own self, right? So you have to have mindfulness. You have to have gratitude, self-compassion. And to foster peace in relationships, we have to have active listening. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a big person that when somebody's saying something to me, I'm already over here to what I'm going to say back. So that means I'm not actively listening, right? So that means sometimes the conversation can go from what should have been peaceful to not so peaceful. So I'm telling on myself. So active listening is important, and having empathy. And then having a mindset of some conflict resolution when you're in relationships. And that could be work, that could be, relationships with your family. That can be a lot of things. So relationships are just relationships. And then extending this keeping the peace into the world. When we do that, then we might volunteer. We might be of service. We may have some advocacy. And I know a lot of people in this room really love to be in sacred service. So I applaud you for that, because what the world needs more of is people in sacred service and advocacy for things and having kindness in our hearts. So Ernest Holmes taught us that peace begins with each individual, and emphasized that we must first cultivate peace within ourselves before we can bring it to the world, what I already said. But this idea of peace is not passive. It requires effort and active spiritual practices. And we know what those spiritual practices are because we come here week after week and we talk about them. We talk about being mindful. We talk about meditation. We talk about spiritual mind treatment. We talk about getting in classes that help build our spirituality, and all of that. So we do that. But peace is something we often seek outside of ourselves. We often seek it in our relationships, in our jobs. You know, I know when I was separated from my job about 5 years ago, I was like, my peace was stripped because I felt like part of who I was the job. So my peace was shattered and I had to find it again. So our jobs and the world around us, yet in our teachings, we are reminded that true peace, again, comes from within. And so this concept of keeping the peace can sometimes be misunderstood. I know that for some, if I say I want you to keep the peace, it might kind of bring up some things from our childhood, that cycle of socialization where we were taught that we had to, get along. We had to be a certain way. We had to show up in a certain way. And so when we talk about keeping the peace, it may be misunderstood because it may mean suppressing our authentic selves, avoiding conflict at all cost. So when you're sitting at the Thanksgiving table and Uncle Joe is there, or Bob, or whoever, Aunt Susie there, and they have their opinion about something, we may not want to go up against that. Just keep the peace. Just let her say what she's going to say. Let him say what he's going to say. I can choose not to be upset by it because we're always at choice. So this idea of keeping the peace, sometimes we may feel stifled. We may feel that we have to be silent to maintain the harmony. So I remember that when I was growing up, my mom was an x-ray technician, and she was, at that time, you had on-the-job training. So she applied. She started being an orderly in that department, and then they said, why don't you go to x-ray school and become an x-ray technician? So what I know about my mom is she was a hard worker, a dedicated student, and a really loving and dedicated mother. But she was spread so thin. So I was the young girl, the little girl at home that I didn't make any waves. I wanted my mom to just come home to a serene environment and have everything done. And so I was cooking and just making sure, and I never gave her any trouble until I got about 16 years old, though. But I met this cute guy. And I married him. So sometimes we want to keep the peace for other people. And we're not looking at ourselves and discovering and maintaining our own peace. So, and when I talk about that, I have to mention this too, because in this world we're encouraged to wear masks, pretending to be what we are not for acceptance, for approval, and for safety. Now, I'm not advocating that you go out there and not be safe. You need to be safe. You need to have present awareness. And, my husband always says, keep your head on the swivel. Know where you are, know who you're with. And so sometimes this peace can be elusive. So my granddaughter and I, Nyla, she was watching this story upstairs, and I said, what is that? And so it was a 6-minute short clip on Disney Plus, and it was called Self. And it was beautiful. Anybody have seen that one? You've heard of it? And so it had this great allegory about identity, authenticity, and the challenges of fitting in versus being one's true self. And so there was this wooden doll, and she ran out where all the people were, and she tried to communicate with them, but they had gold arms, and their bodies were gold. They were wearing the same outfits, and they spoke in some Bell languages. And so she started hitting herself, but she was made of wood, so she didn't make the same sound as they made. So she saw a shooting star, and then she decided, I'm going to wish on the shooting star. So she did. And then a hand dropped down. So she took off her wooden hand and she stuck on the gold one. And then she went outside and she did the tap, tap, tap. And guess what? No sound, because she's still made of wood. And then these body parts start falling from the sky, and she started replacing them. And then the last thing that fell was a face. And she put it on. And then as she ran out to greet the others, she stepped on the wooden face, and it cracked. It cracked. At that moment, she was transformed. And she had, what she did was she decided that all this gold, all this tapping, all this transforming myself to be like the others is not worth it. Because what is the cost of conformity? And then what she did was rediscovered herself and her true identity. Imperfect but real for her. And so by picking it up and choosing to put it back on, she reclaimed her authenticity. So I think sometimes in our life, we want to fit in. And so we put on these masks, and it's not truly who we are. And so when we talk about keeping the peace, how can we keep the peace when we're not being our authentic selves? So Ernest Holmes says that we already have this divinity within us, right? So I don't need to be like you, like you, like you, like you. He also says that conformity or imitation is really, so I'm going to use the word suicide. We cannot duplicate. I can't be you. You can't be me. I am my own unique, authentic self, right? And so are you. So the key ideas of duplication and imitation is we give up our uniqueness for something else. And also, if we're imitating, then there's something missing in us. We're lacking our faith in our one divine nature when we're imitating. We have a creative power in us. We are, what did they say? I am the original. You are the original. That's beautiful. I look around the room and I see so many wonderful people. All of you are very wonderful. And you have all these beautiful, unique gifts and talents. And it makes this center a great center, right? And so when we take this out into the world, it also translates out there. So I want to encourage everyone, be their unique, beautiful, authentic self. Each of us is a center of divine creativity, and that no two centers are alike. We are here to express something that has never been expressed before. You are here to express something that has never been expressed before, and the only person that can express it is you, is me. I think that's fantastic. Now, I'm not suggesting that we don't learn, because I can learn from you, I can learn from you, and you can learn from me, but not to duplicate it. Learn, take the lesson, and then be your authentic self. Use it. So, but sometimes, I said before we can get to all of this practicing peace and keeping the peace, I think that we need to practice some forgiveness for our transgressions upon ourselves, for trying to fit in and not stand out and be these beautiful expressions of God that we are. And this is not a criticism. This is just an encouragement to do that. But peace begins when we embrace our authentic self, rooted in divine truth, and set healthy boundaries that honor our spirit and our well-being. We explore how authenticity and boundaries are vital for keeping the peace, both within ourselves and without, and in our relationships. So forgiveness is a key that unlocks this peace, allowing us to release the burdens of resentment, anger, and judgment. Because sometimes when we are trying to get along and fit in, we have some resentment and some angers that may build up in us, and we might have some judgments. So forgiveness should not be a burden or a duty, but it should be seen as a liberating spiritual practice that restores our connection to the divine and allows us to live in harmony with ourselves and with others. So when we had that book study, when I was reading out of the book and teaching out of the book of forgiving, we learned that we might not be ready to forgive or practice forgiveness, but when we do, we free ourselves, and the healing and the transformation can begin to occur. And Holmes believes that when we transform our consciousness and focus on love, forgiveness, and understanding, then we can align ourselves with peace that is already inherent within us and help us to spread that out into the world. So there's a Bible verse that says, you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. So Ernest Holmes didn't say anything specifically about taking off the mask, but he did talk about being your authentic selves, and he did talk about not imitating. So forgiving and keeping the peace is a gateway to our own inner peace. So forgiveness is freedom. And the weight of unforgiveness is illness, is dis-ease, is all of that stuff that we don't want in our life. And we talk about mental equivalent. We talk about, bringing in, seeing what we want and having the mental equivalent of it. And so we want to have the mental equivalent of peace. And we might have to start with forgiveness, but we do the work. We do the work so we can move from one phase to the next. And forgiveness is not something that we do for others, but we do it for ourselves so we can be free. Forgiveness is a choice. The power lies within us to release the hold of past wounds that we may have in our lives so we can move forward and restore our inner peace. This way, we can practice keeping the peace in the world. We start with ourselves. Then we move to our relationships. Then we move to our communities. And then it radiates out into the world. Right? All right. So we have this great connection with our divine self, with oneness. Mother Teresa said, if we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten we belong to each other. Forgiveness reminds us of our shared divinity, right? So there are some questions at the table. We're going to go to our questions, and we're going to dive into keeping the peace and how we do that right now, and then I'll be back. So when you're having a mood, just go with it, feel it. Yeah, we don't want to stifle our emotions, do we? So It's so wonderful to laugh. I love this. So I'm going to wrap up now and give you some more wisdom. Oh, am I working, Jason? So, and then I'll give you some homework. So, keeping the peace. So, in keeping the peace, forgiveness is a gateway to peace, both within and around us. And this journey isn't about ignoring challenges like a mood that we might be in, but approaching them with a deeper perspective. A recognition that the divine connectiveness and creative potential is inherent in every situation. So in every situation, there are opportunities. So whether we're drawing inspiration from the master teacher, some people love that, or Thich Nhat Hanh practices, the ultimate goal is to embody and extend peace as a transformative force in the world. And as we let go of anger, judgment, and resentment, we create a space for the divine to fill us up with love and with harmony. So let us remember that forgiveness is a gift that we give to ourselves, a gift that brings us closer to the truth of who we are, that are beings of peace, love, and infinite potential. And we know that the seeds that we're planting and we're nurturing in our inner garden will shape not only our own lives, but the collective reality that we share in. So we can practice keeping the peace when we practice peace in our own body, our own mind, and our own spirit. So your tools for thriving, and you'll get this email in your email tomorrow. But I'd like you to visit and read St. Francis of Assisi's Make Me an Instrument of Your Peace. It's a beautiful and timeless prayer. And it says, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. And so the practice this week is to read that and begin in quiet reflection of it. Recite the prayer, and then you can choose to focus on one line or the whole entire. I feel that, if you break it up and focus on whatever line stands out for you, and just focus on that and set an intention to pray this daily and to reflect on it. And then you have some journal prompts that you'll get also tomorrow. And that is, how did the practice, after a week, I want you to do it for a week, how did the practice influence your emotions and your thoughts throughout that day? So maybe you want to start in the morning. And did you notice any moments where the prayer theme became relevant in your actions and experience for that day? And what feelings arose in you when you recited it in the morning? And how has the practice deepened your sense of peace and compassion and your purpose? Thank you, and so it is. As we just take a deep breath and deepen ourselves in this love, in this peace, in this joy that we are, knowing that there is only one power, one present. It is in us, it is as us, all around us. Spirit is omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. And then we are the individualized expression of that one, that love, that power, that peace, that joy. And so we know that we anchor ourselves in it, and we allow it to spread in our own body, mind, and spirit. And then we spread it in our homes, in our community, and in the world. It's like a ripple effect when you throw a pebble in the water and it just ripples out. But we know that peace begins with us. We sing the song right now for this holiday season, December. Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. And so we do that. And like Reverend Jeff was saying, we just allow emotions to just come through us. We don't deny them. We just let them pass through, and we take the opportunities and the lessons from it. So keeping the peace in the world, we start with ourselves. We start with this love. We start with this divine spirit, knowing that we're divine emanations of it. And so I bless each and every person here, knowing that being your unique self is the most beautiful thing that you can do. Because that uniqueness comes from that spirit. And so just giving thanks for all that has transpired today, all of you and all of the people in the world. We let peace begin with us, and we spread it to the world. So thank you, God. Thank you, Spirit. Thank all of you. I let go. I let God. And so it is. All right, let's say our affirmation today. And the affirmation is up here. Let's say it together.
Go ahead and stand.
Go ahead and stand. Let's say this affirmation together. Peace is the mindset I cultivate. Let's say it one more time like we mean it.
Peace is the mindset I cultivate.
Okay, something wonderful is happening through me right now.
Something wonderful is happening through me right now.
It is this thing called love.
It is this thing called love.
Love is in my mind.
Love is in my mind.
Love is in my body.
Love is in my body.
Love is in everything I do.
Love is in everything I do.
I am it.
I am it.
I share it.
I share it.
I receive it.
I receive it.
And I move love forward.
And I move love forward.
Because
love
lives here. Happy Sunday.